You invite a lot of people on this?
We
Hi,
are
we're live.
Yes.
How many are we?
Welcome. So, thank you all for joining us for this panel today on mental hygiene and the importance of it. So last night when I was sitting down to write my script, I figured, I said I had to throw this in there. That for me, this is a very important panel for many reasons. But the top three are: firstly, that Raghu and I were able to pull this off in record speed, especially for Dan Utsav, and we were able to do. And for those of you who don't know, Dan Utsav is India's biggest festival of giving, which happens every year from the 2nd to 8th of October. It starts on Mahatma Gandhi's birthday and ends a week later. So I'm so glad that Raghu and I could do our bit of giving by, helping spread the word about mental health awareness, and also do these free mental wellness checks. And secondly, because it's happening during Mental Health Awareness Week. And thirdly, because we have such a unique panel of such eclectic voices. So those are the top three reasons for me to be super excited today. And we all know that mental hygiene is very important, has always been very important, but now even more so. So what we hope to uncover in this conversation is what is mental hygiene, why it's so important for you, and how you can establish your own through different approaches and techniques. So I'm not going to do any lengthy introductions, as I mentioned before we went live. So I'm going to start with Raghu. So Dr.
Oh, wow.
So Dr. Raghu Appasani is a psychiatrist, a neuroscientist, and the founder and CEO of the Minds Foundation. And he works round the clock relentlessly for mental health. I think sometimes compromising his own, but that comes with passion. I think that we're so enthusiastic about what one does. So that's Raghu. Then we have with us Priyanka Verma, who is a clinical psychologist and the founder of the Thought Company. And she's doing some very interesting work in the mental health space on her platform. So do check her out. Then we have with us India's global wellness icon, Sunena Rekhi, who has represented India at the UN twice for International Yoga Day. And I love saying that. It's a really hefty thing to do. So Sunena's been there twice. And then we have with us Gopi Krishnaswamy, who has a lot of experience in the corporate world. And he's a mindfulness, leadership, and emotional intelligence coach. And the regional lead of Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute as well. And he'll tell you later that he works at the intersection of creativity, mindfulness, and leadership. Yes. And last but not the least, Alessandra Torresani, who is an actor and a mental health advocate. And she has a fabulous podcast called Emotional Support. So please do check it out. It's a wonderful resource. And the number of people, Alessandra, who asked me, is that Claire from Big Bang Theory? So yesterday when I put my post out there, I was like, yes, that is Claire. That is Claire. So
Stop, that's so funny. Hi.
Yes, hi. So what we're going to do now is that I'm going to ask each one of you to sort of share your journey in terms of discuss a bit about your own mental health journey, the social, environmental, and cultural elements that played into your upbringing. I know this is a little long. It's basically your story and how you made sense of your own mental health growing up. So how it's played out into your career and why mental health or well-being for you. So Gopi, I'm going to start with you. If you could share your journey, and I'm going to mute myself.
Sure. Thanks, Nina. And hello, everyone. Delighted to be here with this really illustrious panel on this subject. I've said this to Nina before, and I'll say it again. I think one of the biggest contributors to me getting onto this journey was my upbringing, my lack of formal schooling. You see, I was born to writer, teacher, parents, and was a bit of a guinea pig, actually. So I, for the best part of my first 15 years, didn't have any formal schooling. I was completely homeschooled. And as a result of that, there was a lot more emphasis on, let's say, curiosity, asking questions, exploring things, storytelling. and stuff like that, and not just filling up the mind with conceptual knowledge. So I think, in a sense, that actually set me up for various things. Of course, I didn't know it then. Um, it was only later in life, when I was able to look back, that I was able to make sense of a lot of the choices that I had made. Sometime, I think, in my early 20s, I also started kind of messing around with contemplative practices, or messing around with the mind. So it started with something called the Silva method of mind control, and then went on into self hypnotism, and of course more conventional meditation, which of course I couldn't do back then because I was young and restless, and I just couldn't sit in one place for too long. So it started with that, and then I gravitated into Zen, and then discovered what in modern English is called mindfulness, and then that stuck, because one of the things that came out of the discovery is that you didn't really need to sit in one place and close your eyes to meditate, and there were also other forms which could lead to excellent mental health. So that followed, and then it stuck. And mindfulness kind of became a way of life for me. I started integrating it with my work and my life. And eventually found it pretty interesting enough to actually go live in a monastery, quit my job. It's certainly more interesting than managing a P&L. I found that, at least. And so I started combining mindfulness with my experience in the corporate world, in senior leadership positions, and also creativity, a subject that I'm quite passionate about. So in a sense, as Nina said right in the beginning, these are the areas that I work in. And in a sense, this relates quite directly to mental health, mindfulness, leadership, creativity, all of these things. And this has been my journey, as a result of which I today work with people in each of these areas, and also in the confluence of these three areas. That's it about me.
I love how you said the word messing around, and I'm thinking, what is Gopi going to say? Messing around, and then you turn around and say, lovely. Thank you for sharing, Gopi. Alessandra, I'm going to come to you. If you could sort of highlight, your journey, why mental health, and talk a bit about yourself.
Well, first and foremost, I was homeschooled too, so that's very exciting. Well, where do I even begin? I'm an actress. I have been on Big Bang Theory, so I'm so excited that people know me as Claire. So thank you for listening. I have a very special journey with mental health. Speaking about it, being part of panels, being ambassadors, this is all very quite new for me within the past year. I created a show called Emotional Support. That's not just a show, it's also a platform, it's a support group. And it all started because I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 20 years old, and I didn't speak out about it until a few years ago. And really about a year and a half, 2 years ago, did I really speak my truth. And I can't wait to get more into that. But yes, this has been something that I was dealing with and struggling with my entire life. And no one knew what was wrong with me. They just would say that I was a difficult child. I was a tough customer. So yeah, I mean, here I am. I never thought 2 years ago I'd be here speaking on a panel all the way to India. It's just mind blowing. I'm so excited. So yes, thank you, Nina.
Thank you so much, Alessandra. And I think it's so powerful that you share so candidly. I think it helps a lot of people relate to celebrities when they talk about their own mental health journey, because it feels like anybody can be affected by mental health, right? And that's the reality of it. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank
Priyanka,
you.
Priyanka, coming to you, if you could talk a little bit about your own journey and why mental health for you.
So I'm Priyanka, and I'm a psychologist based out of Mumbai. And I think my journey with mental health began once I became a psychologist. And particularly because mental health in India is a very stigmatized concept, it's a very stigmatized area. And very often people don't want to come in and get the right assistance. So like Alessandra said, that people would view them as difficult. They would view them as, not being, like she said, the right customer. And for me, mental health care should be something we engage in, something we actively participate in, and it has to be as open and welcoming as any other kind of healthcare. And just that journey, and trying to gain and work towards acceptance from society for mental health in particularly Mumbai has been my journey with mental health so far. I think where I noticed the difference is because I did part of my education in the UK, and coming back to India and seeing how systems are not in place, structures are not in place, and it's making that whole journey difficult for anybody who tries to seek appropriate and necessary care. So that's been my journey with mental health in Bombay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Priyanka. Raghu, I'm going to come to you now. If you could talk a little bit about your own journey and why mental health for you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nina, for hosting this and joining Minds recently as a board member and putting this whole Donuts of week together with our team. And I think this is the panel to really round up the week about self-care, mental hygiene, actually. But I want to speak a little bit going backwards in my journey. So I am the founder and CEO of the Minds Foundation. It's simply put, it's my vision of how do we create a world in which anyone, anywhere can access mental health resources, but not only access, but live in a society that actually has empathy and compassion, that is supportive of them. So when they even do access it, they can integrate in with one another and have a world that is understanding. And so that's where I'm coming from. But the development of how I got there is obviously a long journey, like any of us. I was primarily born and raised in the United States, in Boston. I was not homeschooled traditionally, but my father did probably provide more education at home than I got in school. So I'm an Indian American. Sometimes they call us ABCDs, but I did live in India from 1.5 to 4 in a very rural village where my parents had grown up. And, it was, I think that experience that really did set a lot of values and tradition and ethics into me. And then I spent a lot of time doing neuroscience research in my high school years, looking at the development of memory and neuroplasticity, looking at stem cells and pediatric brain tumors and development. I was doing all of that. I was a huge nerd in the lab. And when I got to university, I continued that, studying neuroscience, but I opened it up to studying philosophy and ethics as well. And that's really what broadened it for me. I was doing research on addiction and depression at the time, and really enjoyed it, but I was missing something. And there was this instinct, this flame, where I had to do something more. And so I went back to India, and on this trip, I went a bit more solo, and I went to Bihar and the Northeast, which is a very unique place. It is a place where I was exposed to joy and community, but also I was exposed to what human suffering is, true human suffering, and what that means. And some of the most profound experiences that I had witnessing what that means, and also for me spiritually, connecting with myself. And it's a very grounding place for many reasons. So that experience, in parallel with having mental health experience in my own family, was what ignited me to start the Minds Foundation on the basis of creating community and using education as a tool for empowerment. And the last thing I want to mention is 2 key elements that I believe, and I had the privilege of learning, working throughout India through Minds and other experiences, is that the key that we need here is to the mental health crisis. It's actually quite simple. It's creating community so no one feels alone. And then my obsession, like Gopi mentioned, with storytelling and how powerful that is. And not only being cathartic for the storyteller, sharing their own, but for others to feel connected and not alone. And so that's where I'm at. So I'm very excited to be here with such an amazing panel. And let's see where this goes.
Lovely. Yes, I think the power of community is fabulous. And Raghu, the fact that you started studying all this in high school is baffling. Like seriously, like how? Um, so Nana, coming to you, if you could share a bit about your journey and why mental health for you.
I think, thank you first, Nina, Raghu, Alessandra, Gopi, Priyanka. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to be here. My journey has actually just been life. Whatever has happened in life, somewhere or the other, it's kind of been a little stone into that. I didn't know I'm going to go into mental well being, I didn't have any idea of that. But I think, through life, a lot of changes, transitions, countries, my dad passing away, my mom being depressive, having 3 kids, shifting from South Africa to India. Again, that was, I think, set into motion, but nothing had happened yet. And lots happened. I think I got divorced, being a single mom, trying to figure out my life in Mumbai, trying to figure out. I think everything that's been figured out has been figured out in the last 4 to 5 years, where I've really kind of done that because I think for me to be in this space was because I love to share. Everything that I know, everything that I learn, everything, I want to share it with the world. And when God has graced us with it, I think that's where it comes. I think mental hygiene is so very important. But I don't know why people distinguish it between body and mental. I think it's the exact same thing. Like if you go running, it's really not physical hygiene to even run for those many kilometers is mental hygiene. Everything, your body, soul, mind, there's no distinction. And I think it's important as a whole to be hygienic, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. It's the same thing. So that's it.
I love that. I think, yeah, that holistic approach is really important. And in terms of sharing, Sunena, when the lockdown began, you were off the charts in terms of sharing your practice multiple times a day, teaching classes. I think that was very, very noble of you. So
No,
thank you.
I think mental hygiene also in terms of, I think the only thing one needs to think is how to give. And
Yes,
when you learn how to give, you're fine. You suddenly realize there's no issues in life. But when you think about taking, there are too many issues in life, you know?
yes, true,
So,
true,
yeah.
true. Thank you so much for sharing, Sunena. So, a bit about me. I don't have a kind of a cookie cutter resume, so to speak. I think of myself as a mental health advocate since the age of, I think, 16, 17, because one of my very dear friends at school, her father was this famous psychoanalyst, Sudhir Kakkar. So I was very fascinated by him. And I said, when I go to college, that's going to be the subject that I study. So psychology, it was. But then I went on to do a bunch of things, and I think I kind of grew up um, and had my first real job in terms of something that I really cared about 3 years ago when I joined Business World as the editorial lead, and I set up the entire well-being platform. So I personally have suffered from mental health issues since the age of 19. So I've had anxiety, I'd say. So for me, sharing has been very powerful. And after my stint with Business World, I realized that this is really what I need to do. I need to crusade. I need to create conscious conversations. And so that's what I'm doing. And I recently launched my own platform very gingerly about 3 weeks ago, actually. And it's called The Pursuit of Balance. And so that's where I'm at, and very happy to be here moderating this panel. So, Raghu, is there still a little feedback coming from my mic?
You're good.
All right. So we're going to jump right in. Raghu, the first question goes to you. What is mental hygiene?
Well, I think everyone answered that question a bit, but just to bring it back, let's define it as something, right? It's a practice of trying to maintain mental health by being proactive about not only just your behavior, but how you treat your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul, and your environment. And it's about thinking about your overall psychological well-being, right? And you have to define psychological well-being as being encompassed of all of that, right? It's what Sunaya already said. So more often than not, though, what happens, right, is that we end up running through our days on autopilot, juggling so many tasks. We don't even give second thoughts. We don't let our minds be anywhere present. And we're just thinking about the future or the past. But when we do this, we end up neglecting all of our senses, right? There's the 5 senses we're taught: touch, smell, sight, hearing, taste. But that's not it. You know, our minds have been conditioned to filter out all other senses of spirit, of energy, of things that we have been conditioned to not see and to feel. And so mental hygiene, simply put, is the same thing as brushing your teeth. It's what you do with an intent and presence and awareness and acknowledgement of your body, of your mind, of your physical and your spiritual form in the moment, and paying attention intentionally to that every day and incorporating it just as you would brush your teeth or drink your cup of coffee. So I'll leave it at that.
So, Raghu, I want you to talk a little bit about the neuroscience aspect. Talk about the role of neuroplasticity and that anybody can change their habits, because people so often say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I want you to talk a little bit about the neuroscience aspect.
Sure. I don't know if I'm an old dog yet, right? We'll see. Sometimes I feel like it, sometimes I don't. Usually if I talk to Alessandra, I don't feel old anymore.
No, not you. I'm not referring to you, but like in general, people say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Let's think about it this way, right? For the tech people out there, let's think about, how do you change your internal computer chip? We have this idea of neuroplasticity, and basically what it means is that you have the ability to change your brain. You can train your brain. The brain is actually unconsciously constantly changing. It's creating new formations between neurons and synapses. It's developing new memories. It's developing memories based on emotions and behaviors. That will never end, even till the day you die. And so that's continuously happening. Now, the concept in mainstream neuroplasticity is the fact that now we can consciously do things to create that change. And how do we do that, right? So I think, how do you reorganize the brain itself to adapt to these things? How do you do it unconsciously? And how do you do it consciously? So we can self-induce neuroplastic change very simply. Let's take an example. You identify a habit or something that you want to change or learn. That's step 1. Be very intentional about what it is, and you can write these down. Number 2, be mindful about what that is. So start to be aware of what your responses are, what your emotions are, and what your behaviors are when you think about that habit. We all have negative habits. Once you do this, then you can go into what we can call a replacement mode. And 3, be very mindful about your goals. So set a date, set what you want to achieve, and think about, by that date, what should I be feeling and where do I want to be when I'm there? And 4, attention. So start to pay deep attention to your habits and your goals, because these neuroplastic changes, they just don't happen if you write it down or you think about it. It's about being intentional and attentive to make it happen. And by doing so, you actually create the change. And then 5, along the way, it's very important to reward yourself for even the smallest wins. I think a lot of high achieving individuals, like those of you on this panel, it can be hard for us to actually pause and recognize an accomplishment that we might have made, because we want to do so much more. But by accomplishing the simple things along this journey, because it is a journey, you start to have positive reinforcement, which again enhances the neuroplastic change. I don't want to go on too much, but I do want to add a little bit about, I think, how the importance of nutrition can affect neuroplastic change as well, right? And so feel free to cut me off, anyone that wants to contribute. But just to briefly state, we unfortunately live in a world in which that the healthiest foods are not accessible to most. And the foods that are filled with processed ingredients, unhealthy ingredients that cause inflammation, which in turn causes stress, which in turn causes cognitive distress and mental distress and anxiety and depression and all of that comes with it. Now, what does that do? It actually inhibits your ability for neuroplasticity. So this is pretty simple, right? All you need to do is you eat healthier and you follow a few simple guidelines. We can go into it a little bit more afterwards, but basically, physical activity, which some others on the panel can speak about, has very, very, very importance in terms of fighting chronic inflammation. It enhances cognition. It enhances your mood. So similarly, nutrition actually has found similar results. It enhances the molecules you need, BDNF, to actually create memories and to create neuroplastic. The last piece I'll say that as a psychiatrist and therapist, the language and the way we speak to each other and the positive language we can use for one another, can actually enhance relationships, and relationships we know are the key to happiness. And that also enhances your neuroplastic change. And so it's very important. Words create neuroplastic change. Healthy diet creates neuroplastic change. But the most important is that your intention and your attention to what you want will create it.
Thank you for sharing that, Raghu. I've been lecturing my father a lot of late, and I've been telling him that, Papi, you can change your habits. And he's like, no, I'm too old to change. And I said, Papi, you have to understand, even scientifically speaking, that you can create new neural pathways. So I've been doing in-house counseling. And we will be talking about relationships later, Raghu, as you know. But so, Raghu, you are somebody who is very passionate about what you do, and especially mental health. So how do you balance your own mental hygiene factor?
I shouldn't be answering that question. The fact of it is that it's a journey. Okay. So I don't have an answer that I can say that I follow every day. I try my best. And the simple things that I try to do is two things. The ABCs, which is awareness, breathing, circulation. And I try to create a holding space for myself and for others around me, and try to have those ABCs in place and do things that enhance them. The second is my 3 M's that I try to do every morning, which is meditation, movement, and mindfulness. And it's simply doing some type of meditation, some type of movement, whether it's throwing on a song and dancing in the shower, whatever it is, and then being mindful. So either usually drinking my cup of coffee just with intent, not on social media, not on my phone.
We all want to be a part of Raghu's dancing in the shower in the morning, right?
Gopi, I remember
we all wanted to hear that one.
Gopi, I remember when I did the workshop with you, the first time in Delhi, I think there was an element of mindful eating, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't there? Yes, yes. Yeah.
Did you eat the raisin?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I remember that. So Priyanka, coming to you, that as a clinical psychologist, does the profession sometimes itself come in the way and mess with your mental health hygiene?
So as a psychologist, I think essentially our 8-hour day is us sitting and holding space for others, and us being aware of what's happening in the room when our clients come in, or now even online. So yes, sometimes the conversations can be triggering, or they can affect our emotional state and our mental state. But I think a very big part of our training and the investment we continue to make in ourselves help us maintain that kind of mental hygiene for ourselves. And as a result, it feeds back into the way we work with our clients. So for example, we have a team of psychologists that work with us, right? And something that we've made mandatory for our team is that they have to go through supervision while they are working with us continuously. And they also have to go in for therapy individually as well, because for us to be able to hold space in conversations with others means that we have to constantly work on ourselves and unlearn and relearn and work through our biases and um, and just be more present and more aware. And Raghu speaks a lot about awareness, and I think a very big part of emotional and mental hygiene is being aware of what you're feeling in the moment with yourself and with your clients as a result of that. So yeah.
Okay, so another question for you is that, in terms of the space that you're working in, you see a wide array of intense emotions basically running all over the place. So where do you see the role of emotional hygiene in this context?
So emotional hygiene would form the basis of any mental and emotional health. It would form the basis of that. That means good sleep, good exercise, and good food. This is the basis of good mental health. So these are your pillars. If I'm able to maintain good emotional mental hygiene, I'm able to function better, I'm able to do better. I'm able to show up to work and be 100% more focused with it. Um, so when we are running around in our routine and in our day with these things, it is important for us to make sure that we are getting our 8 hours of sleep, we're eating a nutritious meal, we're being mindful of ourselves, we're taking time out to take care of ourselves with this.
So Gopi, I'd like to come to you. Thank you for sharing that, Priyanka. Gopi, I'd like to come to you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it was buffering a bit at my end. Gopi, emotional intelligence is an area that you work in extensively. I often hear you say emotional health fuels mental health. What are your thoughts on that? Could you please elaborate a little bit?
Sure, sure. Nina, you've also heard me say this, that I mean, this whole idea of emotional intelligence or emotional health is a few decades old, maybe 50 years old. Whereas we've been around in existence a lot longer, and mental health, emotional health, these were aspects that were recognized to be important even thousands of years ago. Right? Now, we use the word emotional intelligence. What is emotion in the first place? When I ask people that, they say emotion. Well, it's thought. I'm like, okay, so what is thought? Then they're like, no, emotions must be feelings. So how do we understand all of this? I think that's the key bit, and both Raghu and Priyanka have already spoken on pieces of this. Emotional intelligence is nothing but understanding our emotions, those of others, and being able to distinguish the difference between these, using that information to guide our thinking and our behavior. Right now, very simplistically put. Now, if you just kind of reflect on this, what does it mean? It means actually nothing but moving away from that autopilot stage that Raghu spoke about. See, most of the time we are on autopilot. We jump out of bed and we, go into automatic mode. So while we're brushing our teeth, we're already kind of planning the day. And, unlike Raghu, most people, when they're in the shower, they're probably, discussing the rest of the day with the colleagues in the office, or there are other people as well there, imaginary, of course, hopefully. And the mind is never in the moment. When you people eat, the mind is somewhere else. You're looking at your emails or catching up on the news, right? You ask people in the afternoon what they had for breakfast. See how many are able to even remember or answer it immediately. Some might say, well, did I even have breakfast today? So we're constantly in the state of autopilot or multitasking. And it's unfortunate that this has also been construed to be efficient. I often say that multitasking is actually when you're doing multiple tasks equally badly at the same time. Right? You're not
Yeah.
doing anything. And all of this, in a sense, and what you do with your body and what you do with your nutrition, right, contributes to the state of mental health or your emotional intelligence. And each fuels the other because they're not terribly different in the first place.
Mhm.
If we talk
So,
emotional health, if we're talking of emotional intelligence, it's coming from having good physical mental health, where the neurons in your head, the neurons in your heart, the neurons in your gut are making connections and giving you the information and insights and the wisdom that you need to navigate life skillfully.
mhm. Sunena, I think there's a little buffering coming from your end. If you could just mute as well. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Gopi, for that. But I want you to talk a little bit about that in this context. How does mindfulness help when you're constantly on, whether you're in the shower, whether you're eating breakfast? How can mindfulness help in this context?
See, mindfulness is actually the contemporary, let's say, English word that's been given to simply being in the present moment, right? The term probably comes from the ancient Buddhist traditions, but simply put, even in Pali, the word for mindfulness is sati. Sati means awareness. You simply are aware of the present moment. That's all. And that is all there is. The present moment is all there is. When we're worrying about the future, when are we worrying? We're worrying now, right? When we're getting depressed about the past, when are we getting depressed? We're getting depressed now. So ultimately, it all boils down to the present moment. And if we can direct our attention and our awareness to the present moment, to the body, to the mind, to our surroundings, that is mindfulness for you. And automatically, the mind starts to become more relaxed. A more relaxed mind means a calmer mind. A calmer mind means more clarity. Right? So it isn't actually that difficult. If we were to just realize that we are in autopilot and we move from autopilot to aware, it is very simple. And mindfulness doesn't require you to go and sit in a cave in the Himalayas for 20 years or stand on one foot. You can actually practice mindfulness every moment, no matter what you're doing. And therefore, it is one of the most effective and powerful ways of mental hygiene or mental health, or gaining mental health.
Gopi, when I just even listen to you, I start feeling like calm descend over me. So thank you for sharing that. Alessandra, I'm going to come to you now. So you're a celebrity, and we know that you have been suffering from bipolar since a very long time, and you're constantly under the scanner as a celebrity, right? So how do you find the balance of being under the spotlight and maintaining your own mental hygiene?
Well, what if I said I don't? No, I have to be a little inspiring here, right? It's very tricky. I can't speak on people who suffer depression or schizophrenia or any other mental diagnosed illness. I can only speak on bipolar disorder. And I know that even with the proper medication and the proper doctors, every single day is just a fight to stay alive and find a reason to get up in the morning. And my highs can be high and my lows can be low. And to be perfectly honest, acting and being an in quote unquote celebrity really has no effect on that part of my mental health journey, if you will. It doesn't, because it's something that I deal with every single day of my life. And yes, of course, there's stress and there's work and there's, judgment, and people will be trolls and they'll write in and say something mean. But that comes with that territory, whether you have bipolar disorder or a mental illness or not. So I think the biggest fight, if you will, that I go through is with my own personal internal struggle. Did that answer the question? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand that it's one thing that, being a celebrity, you're trolled, but I wonder how that sort of disturbs your equilibrium internally, and how do you balance that? I mean, because I would imagine that if you're suffering from a mental health issue, and I do too, so I sometimes feel that I feel more imbalanced than a person who doesn't have anxiety. So I'll tend to overthink, and I'll keep on, sort of ruminating over and over again. So I'm wondering that as a celebrity, when the spotlight is on you and people are being nasty to you, so what helps you? So there are moments of breakdown, Alessandra, that you have. Um, what helps you balance there is what I want to know, really.
Well, with with being in this business and being a celebrity, it comes with the territory that there will be people that try to bring you down. There can be one, million people who love you, and it takes one person to pull you down. In regards to what I do for my mental health to kind of stay sane, is I didn't do anything at first. And now, what I am doing is speaking with like minded individuals, such as all of you on the panel here right now, speaking with guests that come on my show, and I get to hear their stories, whether I know them or not. And I think that the thing that helps me the most is even speaking to friends who have not shared their journeys, whether it be from themselves or with family or with friends that they've met, and to know that you're not alone. And even your closest friends will come on my show and I get stuff out of them that I can't even imagine I got out of them. And I speak to them on a daily basis. So I think that there's some sort of vulnerability that you have to have when you talk to your mental health. And I think that my support system, my emotional support system, is quite possibly the only thing that keeps me balanced.
So if I was to ask you, Alessandra, what does resilience look like to you? What would you say?
Well, it looks like a lot of things. Um, resilience is something that I feel like I was born with. I feel that word is so interesting. When we talked about this question, it was the one that kept getting in my head of like, what does resilience mean to me? It means a lot of things. It means getting up in the bed and surviving just the day, because that's a really hard struggle that I have. Some days I just don't want to go up, and I just feel like, you know what, maybe it's easier just to die. And that's just the truth. I know that's a really tough, pill to swallow, but that's just the truth. But it's funny. I always use the example of my husband when it comes to resilience. He has been sober for 12 years, and he always says to me, it's the same sort of path with mental health and with what I'm going through. Is you can't think too far in the future. You can't think, okay, well, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be there and everything's going to be great. When you have a mental illness, you have to take it every single day. So resilience will always mean something different to me every single day.
Oh, wow. 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 Thank you for sharing
I
that.
love that.
Yeah, really. Raghu, would you like to say something?
I mean, I think having been on the show, Alessandra does, and I am friends with her as well. She's brought things out of me and helped me tell my story in a way that was very cathartic, and an area of growth personally. So um, it's true, and I think that helps us all with our own mental hygiene and resilience. And resilience is very key. And I think that maybe this will go into the concept of relationships and community as well, which are, I think, the number one things when it comes to building resilience.
Yeah. So Nana, I'd like to come to you now. So you're also, a well-known personality, and I mean, I see people comment on your page constantly, and your exposure to social media is tremendous. So, and that's something that we all rely on so much now, right? So how do you personally find the balance and to not get consumed by it?
Uh, I, I mean, yes, but I think the most important thing is where you're able to spend time and give quality time and attention to the people who you love. So for me, if it's my daughter, it's my puppy, it's my people who work with me, it's my students, I need to do that before I give all the love to social media as well. So I think that really keeps my balance, to stay attentive and mindful. Even if I'm spending just 1 hour with my daughter, I'm there, I'm mindful. But it does create a lot, because sometimes I'm just on my phone and I have to tell myself, for my mental hygiene, that charge it in another room. Don't even see your phone, because even the phone creates a lot of anxiety in people. because there's all your work is on that phone. Everything is happening in one go. We have no concentration span. I think it's 6 or 7 seconds. It's lesser than a glowworm. We have no attention because we are bombarded with so much, and that does create anxiety. Today we were talking, we will talk about relationships also, but even that creates anxiety. Too many choices, too much information, too many people to choose from. It, even though it might all be great information, but it can be mentally exhausting for a lot of people. For me, I think I keep my balance because I'm not actually a social media person. I do not scroll down my Instagram. I do not scroll down my Facebook. Very, very, very little. I do my work and I leave social media. I finish my work. It's a way for me to be talking to my people, and after that, I'm done. I don't look at other people's stories or other people's posts that much. I don't have the time to do it. So.
Yeah, no, and thank you. Sunena, you're doing so much work in the space of self-care and self-love. And I want to understand a bit from you that what is the gap that you see that needs to be filled? Because 7 months I've seen you just, you're on and you're supporting people. So what is that gap that you see that needs filling?
I think that's a great question. I love this question because we all, do you know what our average lifespan is? You know how many days we have left? 30,000 days. Now I'm going to be 40 now. I've just turned 39, 40. I've got 15,000 days.
Woohoo!
All right, in 15,000 days, it's going to be filled with pleasure, joy, excitement, learning, growth. It has to be. Every day has to be phenomenal. Otherwise, when I'm going to die, how can I say I've had a great life? So now, with self care, with self love, I do so many things for myself. And I'm feeling like I'm glowing. Like I'll do my facials, I'll get my massages, I'll get my therapies, I'll do like a steam bath, I'll do a salt water bath, I'll go out with my friends, I will shop. I do things which I enjoy. I listen to Hindi music in the night these days before I sleep. It makes me happy. And it's very important. And when, like your hair is a part of you. Like right now, I'm losing hair, so I'm putting onion juice, but that's a part of self care. And when you care for yourself, you start to love yourself even more. Doing stretches in the morning, doing your sadhana in the morning, or meditating in the morning is a practice for you, for your self love, for how your attitude is going to be throughout the day. Like Alessandra said it so beautifully, that every day you need to take care of your mental health. You don't need to think, what will it be 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line? It is like how Gopi also said, it's the present moment. So if we are able to just be like, what could be the last day, let's do it. And I've actually been doing it for the last month and a half, and I'm feeling, I never thought I could do it. Like I could just live the way I want to live, and I'm doing it.
That's
It's
so
been short. I
lovely.
don't know how long it'll last, but yeah,
As long as it lasts. And
as long
Gopi,
as it lasts.
yeah. Gopi, I wanted to ask you a question. Sunena mentioned salt bath or whatever. Are you aware of floating? Have you ever tried floating? And have you tried Lucia 3 lights, which is supposed to decalcify your pineal gland?
No,
Have
Nina,
you?
I haven't tried either of them. I've heard of these things, but personally, I haven't tried either of them. I think more than floating, I like the fact that my feet are on the ground and I'm able to walk. And just being aware of the fact that I can walk makes me feel that walking is a great miracle. So I come to floating when I'm a little bored with walking.
Raghu, I spoke to Emily last night, and she said, Nina, before you start the panel, make sure that you ground yourself. But Raghu, I want to know, as a doctor and as a neuroscientist, that have you experienced floating or Lucia 3 lights?
Yeah. So I think just to redefine myself from what you said, I want to say
Sorry.
that I'm a human first. The doctor thing, it's there,
Mhm.
but it's more about experience. So I've done floating,
Mhm.
and I've done breath work, pretty intense different styles of breath work, including Wim Hof and ice baths, and I've done Mayan shamanic sweat lodges. So
Wow.
I love Gopi's idea of, I like to have my feet on the ground, and that's a meditation. He's 100% right. I think what we need to do is also redefine the term meditation to be broad. And it includes whatever makes you feel that grounded and sense of awareness. And so, yes, each one of those modalities, floating, sweat lodge, whatever it is, they bring out a different thing, and they bring a different experience. And so I think for people who are a little bit maybe fearful of the concept of meditation, I can't sit still, whatever it is, there's so many different ways you can get into a meditative state. One of the most active ones that I do is actually cooking, but being intentional about what I'm doing and focusing. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to come back again and ask you a question that, because as you're so passionate, have you ever found your profession coming in the way of your mental health? Has that happened? Does it happen?
Yeah, I think Priyanka actually alluded to this earlier on about how, in our job as psychiatrists and psychologists, we're spending most of the day holding space for a lot of others and for their emotions and things like that. And it's a lot. And sometimes you don't feel it in the moment. And it can then kind of get to you later on and be draining. So, over the years, just even working in medicine, we see a lot of very direct exposure to human suffering. I mean, we've had patients die in our hands, right? But you have to think of ways that you're going to be able to process those things. And so for me, I really had to do it. But to be, completely honest with you, I've had many moments of severe burnout, including in this past year, especially with the pandemic and everything layered on. I think I hit the lowest points of my life. In July specifically. So yeah, it's tough, but you talk about resilience, and when you think about resilience and you feel lost and hopeless, you have to think, what's in my back pocket? And if you've developed the tools of your mental hygiene, you can start to check in with it.
I love the sound of that. That's so wonderful. So basically, you're building a repository through practice that when shit hits the fan, you know exactly where to reach, and you're like, I know what to do.
Yeah. So, I will just advocate that repository or toolkit needs to be given to children when they're born and continue to be taught.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Raghu, when one talks about mental hygiene, what comes to mind is a lifestyle change or lifestyle tips when you think about that, right? So what is the role of medication in mental hygiene, or is it a separate domain altogether?
Yeah, just briefly answering that. Basically, mental health is a spectrum. We all have mental health. And at any point in our life, we'll be at some point on that spectrum. All of us at this point, through everything we've been through as a world, we are going to hit a point of mental distress at some point. Then there's mental illness and mental disorders or mental ill health, whatever you want to call it, that requires more, more treatment at a higher level of care. There is a role for medication there. There is a role. I think that, Alessandra mentioned it as well, that the medication, it keeps her going with everything else, the social support and her emotional support system. It's not one or the other. We have to take a holistic approach to treatment. Now, when we talk about mental hygiene, that's for something everyone should be doing and can be doing. When it comes to medication, the way I like to explain it to people when they're hesitant is that if you're depressed, and you feel depressed, you can do your yoga and your meditation and your therapy. But if you get to a point where you're so depressed that you can't get out of bed to even do those things, then you need a bridge because you're stuck on an island. And the bridge can be a medication, and it doesn't have to necessarily, in most cases, be lifelong. It can just be a little bit of that catalyst and that tool to get you. So there's a role.
So Alessandra, I'd like to ask you, were you hesitant? And if I may ask you, when were you diagnosed with bipolar, and were you hesitant to have medication?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm still hesitant to have medication and I know that I need it. And so I focus that I do take it, but I was diagnosed properly when I was 21, 22. What's very funny actually is that I was diagnosed by a very spiritual, holistic acupuncturist. And he was a friend, family friend, and I had been going in there for a while, and I had been shooting a show in Canada, and I kept coming back and forth, and I was having these ups and these downs, and I was explaining to him, and I said, "Oh, I'm just stressed. Just put the needles in, put them in my back, make me relax." And he treats a lot of actually high profile people, and not even just high profile, but creative types. And I said to him, I must be stressed. And he said, "Has anyone ever told you that you're bipolar?" I said, "What?" He says, "Yeah, you're bipolar. You literally have all the symptoms. I can just feel your body. I can read it. I just know this. You need to go to a psychiatrist and tell specifically the issues and recommend saying, 'Do you think I have bipolar disorder?' Another doctor does." So if it wasn't for my acupuncturist, I don't know if A, I would be here, and B, if I would be properly diagnosed again. I had been through so many ups and downs when I was younger that they put me on antidepressants, which made it completely worse for me, which made the highs higher and lows lower. And I was suicidal, and it was the wrong medicine for me. So I think it's very important. And I truly believe in both Eastern and Western medicine working together.
So, I mean, since I was going to ask you later, but since we're talking right now, what I wanted to ask you is that, you're a role model for a lot of people, and
Oh,
people know
God.
about. No, no, you are. Listen, I mean, Alessandra, you're out there. You have like a couple of 100,000 people following you. People, look up to you, and they know about your mental illness. So, what made you come out with it? Because a lot of people silently suffer, don't share it, don't talk about the fact
Mm.
that they have any issues. And did you regret it? So, when did you come out? Did you ever regret it? And has it interfered with your own mental health?
Ooh, great questions. Well, the first one I'll say is I was very hesitant to come out with it because when I had told family and friends and a lot of people in the business, they said, "Oh, you probably shouldn't say anything. You don't want to be labeled as difficult or a diva on set or something like that. So it's best just to keep it quiet because you don't want people to think that there's something wrong with you and you're a pill to deal with." So I finally had come to terms with it. A good friend of mine is an ambassador for NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I'm not sure if you have that in India, but I am an ambassador for NAMI. And she had invited me to a walk that they were having to raise money. And I was just so inspired. There were all these people around me that were walking with me, and they were all, so positive about mental health. And I'd kind of like dropped a little bit here and there. Oh, yeah, I have a mental illness, but didn't really get into specifics. And then maybe a year later, I had gone to a luncheon for NAMI, and I went up to one of the heads and I said, "This is really strange. I'm Alessandra. My friend is Morgan, and I'm bipolar. And I've never actually heard so many people have similar stories to me. And this is very overwhelming to me. And I just feel such a passion. And if you ever need anything, like I'm here." So that woman's name was Katrina, and Katrina and I had kept in touch for a long time. And I helped her out on some stuff and submitted things, but really the come to Jesus moment was when she asked me to do a video um at Mental Health Awareness Day, so October 10th. I believe it was either last year or 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And she said to me, "We're having a lot of problems in society right now. Young people are using mental health as a keyword, as a hashtag to get the likes, to get the follows, to get the popularity, the views on YouTube." And she said, "We're trying to do this campaign for World Mental Health Day by saying this is not a keyword. This is not a hashtag. This is truth. Don't use this and damage this and make it bad." Um, So I took that moment. I made a video talking about how I was bipolar and that it was a struggle I dealt with every day. And to see other people treat it lightly is really hurtful and that you're not alone. And that video went huge. And I had more people write me, email me. I never had such feedback ever from anything I ever put out. And it sounds like silly now. I'm like, oh, it's so egotistical, but people are like, oh, you're inspirational. And I'm like, please, I'm nothing. Like, I'm not that at all. I'm just Alessandra. I'm just me. So it was that moment where I had started the conversation. I started doing live Instagrams. I started doing Instagram TV posts, long ones, just talking about my mental health, talking about if I was having, a panic attack or a moment or anxiety or a high or low. And from there, people started reaching out to me in the mental health world, including Raghu Spaghetti. And here we are right now having this conversation. And I think that that's what's super important is what I like to tell everyone is mental illness and mental health is your own journey. I don't really like that word journey, but I seem to use it a lot in when I'm speaking about my mental health. But it is your own journey. And if you don't feel comfortable enough with speaking and saying that this is what's wrong with you or this is the help that you need, please don't push yourself to share a story. You don't have to do that. But just sit and listen and take everything in because it took me years to finally be able to say something, but I was inspired and I knew it was going to be a safe space by hearing other people's stories.
Wow, that's so powerful. Alessandra, I could spend just an hour asking you questions. There's so many questions I want to ask you, but we will do that another time, I'm sure. But Priyanka, I wanted to ask you because sleep is a very important factor when it comes to your mental hygiene. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sleep is definitely one of our three pillars of good mental health. And as Raghu said, that we need to create a toolkit of ways to take care of ourselves, and sleep definitely is the most important thing in it. After all, like we spend 1/3 of our life sleeping. Now, the reason why sleep is important is because it's like a reset button to our emotions, to our mental health as a result of that. It gives us time to disconnect, disengage, and then come back to something with a fresher perspective towards things. I mean, what I noticed with clients, especially, is when those who are battling anxiety, who are dealing with depression at that point of time, giving themselves that time to disengage with sleep gives them that energy to take on the next day, to cope with situations better. And sleep is important because what happens is that if I'm not rested, I'm not going to be able to function properly. I'm not going to have the clarity of thought I need. I'm not going to be a good decision maker for my own life. And that's why sleep disturbance, not enough sleep, insomnia, all play into poor mental health. And if any client comes in, the first three things I really encourage them to do is sleep, exercise, and food. So when we look at sleep hygiene, we're looking at it as the basics of good mental health. And there are different ways in which we can help promote that. It could be ensuring you sleep in a dark room. It's ensuring you have a sleep time routine. It could be a shower before you go to sleep, reading a book on a chair next to your bed, not conditioning your bed with anything else apart from sleep or sex. It has to be something which is sacred to you. It has to be an act. It's not something we always have to schedule in, because if you look at it right now, and I think it's also come up, we're the generation of doing things. We're constantly on the move, trying to get things done, trying to get things working for us. And people tend to use this line that I'll sleep when I'm dead, which is a very careless statement to make, because right now, if I don't take care of myself, I will not be able to function properly. I will not be able to take care of myself better. So yeah, sleep hygiene is the basics of mental health, because without which clarity of thought and being an advocate for myself or a good decision maker for myself just won't take any shape or form.
Priyanka, my therapist, when I'm like in the toilet, will ask me two questions. She'll say, okay, Nina, first of all, I want to know how is your sleep? And secondly, how is your relationship with your daughter? Because it's a direct reflection. Like the moment things aren't okay with me, my sleep is out the window and my relationship with my daughter is down the flush. So yeah, sleep is really, really important. So Nana, I want you to talk a little bit about the role that yoga can play in one's mental hygiene.
All right, thank you, Nina. Yoga has such a yoga is not an exercise really, it's a lifestyle, and yoga can help you. Like, it has helped me find a lot of clarity to unearth my psychological disturbances, because we all accumulate. There's so many accumulations when we are young. We are from our upbringing, from our environment, from our teachers, from our friends. We accumulate too many things within us. And to be able to remove them, yoga and meditation really helps to unearth all these disturbances that were in there, to accept them. I think more than, there is an awareness that you feel with it, but more than the awareness, sometimes it's important to first accept that this is happening. A lot of people have mental problems or physical, whatever the problem that they have, they are not aware of it. They are not accepting that this is happening to them. And if you don't accept what is happening, you can't change what is happening. It's not possible to change something that you think is already fine. And I think yoga and meditation brings forth yourself. It's yoga doesn't teach you who you are, it teaches you who you can become. And that's how it really helps in your mental
So,
hygiene.
so tell me something,
The
Sunena.
hygiene.
The word yoga means yog means union, right? Okay. Okay. So now,
Yes,
Gopi,
to
I'm going to come to
unite.
you. Yes, I found this lovely connection. So I feel Gopi, I'm a social media addict. I'm guilty. Okay, fully guilty. Where I'm constantly on social media, so that means that I'm not one with myself when I'm on social media, right? And you spoke about this concept of this, that we're constantly on, sort of like hamster on the wheel, just going on and on and on. um, and when I spoke to you yesterday, and I mentioned to you that I'll be asking you that how do we make social media our ally? I think it's an important question that I really want you to answer. That how can we make social media our ally and not lose that sense of centered oneness with oneself?
Nina, I actually suspected that this was a trick question because you chose to ask me about social media, and I'm actually not very big on social media.
But that's the
So,
thing. How can you make it your ally? Because
so I think there's a great perspective that you bring in here with that question, because look, 3.5 billion people are on social media in some form or the other, and it's been a great leveler. It's democratized, content. It's brought long lost friends and family together. All of that. So social media is by itself, not a bad thing, and you can say that for pretty much a lot of technology, right? So the excess is when it starts to become a problem. When instead of it being a tool, it starts to govern us, and we are literally the tool, right? So in that sense, it's very much like the mind. The mind makes for a great tool, but it's a very poor master. So if we are able to use social media, right, to make the world a better place, I think that would be, one huge purpose that social media can serve. And speaking to what Sunaina said about not necessarily being caught up in what other people are saying, and spending the whole day, because then it creates turbulence in the mind. You're looking at each and every comment, every stimulus triggers a thought process, and before you know it, you're completely caught up in all of that. So it has two parts to it. It can work well. It can take content and help people who really need it, like Alessandra's doing, and uh, it can also make you addicted, and it can take away the human connection, right? So today I often kind of see people who are on social media so much and using this stuff so much that they've lost the ability to communicate face to face. I think it was pre-pandemic, yes, perhaps early this year. That in one of my sessions, I think I said something, remotely funny, and there was this girl in the front row who looked at me with a straight face and said, "LOL, lol," and I was like, "What?" I didn't quite get it for a moment. So I blinked at her, I asked her to repeat, and then she explained to me. So I was like, wow. So people are so used to saying these things online that now it's even made it offline. And but believe me, her face was straight when she said it. So either it was a very bad joke and she was being sarcastic, or she had lost the ability to emote.
Yeah,
So
I hear you. Yeah.
this can, if it runs away, it can actually help us, lose that human connection. It can make us lose that human connection, and that's not a good thing. So I think, as always in everything, moderation is key. Social media by itself is not a bad thing. The way we use it is what is important. And if we can use it well, we can be mindful about our usage, the amount of time we spend on it, what importance we give it in our lives, right? And not let our entire life and thought process and everything be dictated by what we see there. Then it can actually be used pretty well, if you ask me.
I just want to respond to that, Gopi. I love everything that you said, and when we're using social media, we feel connected, and it actually releases dopamine, which then enhances our addictive and reward circuit. But what it's not releasing is the other hormones or the other physiological effects of when you're physically with another being. And so we have to re-understand that, and society needs to be reminded that we're actually very social creatures that are interdependent, who have been trained to be independent. And that's very key. And I think that it's funny, I've been using social media more because I'm saying, oh, I'm using it to promote mental hygiene. But at the same time, then I get a screen report on Sundays that says your screen time went up, 120% this week. So how do we check ourselves in that?
Right. Yeah. And I think just, like you yourself said, the idea of being in the moment, being aware, being mindful, and then, constructing our lives accordingly will have a great role to play in how we use these tools that are available to us.
Raghu, I mean, my therapist told me about this Harvard study that how one of the most critical factors determining our happiness is the quality of our relationships, right? So what role do you think relationships play in improving our mental health or our mental health, our mental hygiene factor?
Sure. I believe you're talking about the Harvard, basically the happiness study, right? So what,
Yes.
for those that don't know it, just briefly, they basically started tracking second year university students at Harvard, 268 of them starting in 1938. And they tracked them for about 80 years, right? And they tried to see what is it that makes someone have basically a satisfied life. What is it that makes them happy? And it's simply put that they found our relationships and how happy we are in these relationships has the power to influence our health, right? So taking care of our body is important, but tending to your relationships is a form of self-care too. They found this is really important, and I found it fascinating. Close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. These ties really protect them from the obstacles of life, right? They also help delay mental and physical decline, and they're better predictors of long and happy lives in social class and IQ, which is really, really key. And the thing that really strikes me is that loneliness actually is more dangerous and is a more prevalent killer than alcoholism and smoking. And for those that are maybe in a marriage and it's not going so great, they actually found that even having a relationship and and getting into arguments and bickering every now and then is still okay, because at the end of the day, knowing that someone is there to count on, that factor is still very important and actually has a similar effect. And so I think that, these don't necessarily have to be romantic relationships only. Obviously, there's a certain power to that that's enhanced, but that strong sense of community we talk about, and how do we fight loneliness, which is one of the top killers in the world. How do you fight it is through, building this community and realizing that we are interdependent and we learn from one another and we're a collective, and what we do is to enhance society as a whole.
Raghu, I know this is a whole different conversation, but I'm picking up from what you said using the word loneliness, right? So in terms of the pandemic happening and going on right now, people can't date really, so to speak. One has to be really careful. So how do you recommend people deal with their mental health in terms of the loneliness factor? Because you can't date. Okay, you can talk to somebody, online. You can sext, you can do video, whatever. But how does one deal with the factor of loneliness, that intimacy which is missing? How do you deal with that?
Should I be answering this question?
Yes, please do. You have to.
Alessandra.
Okay, Alessandra.
No, okay.
I mean, to be fair, he just went on a date 2 weeks ago. So I'm married. I have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
All right. So, you're right. I think that it's been a really challenging time for a lot of people, and it's affecting people in so many different ways. How do you combat it? I think we have to. We actually hosted a webinar about dating during the pandemic. I remember a couple of months back, earlier on in the pandemic. That was quite interesting. And what I learned is actually that there's some strong silver linings to this, because what it's doing is it's actually making you, what is that thing that humans used to do well? Like communicate, right? It forced people to communicate before hooking up. It forced people to communicate before having their decisions clouded by other factors. And so, I have, even my best friend, for example, he met someone that he was set up by a mutual friend. They were on Zoom for about 2 months, and then they started dating before they even met officially. And then he came and they met, and it's the strongest relationship that he's ever had. Time is a figment of our imagination, so I don't believe that time has anything to do with the strength of a relationship. But, I think that the fact is, let's look at the silver linings of what this is, and it's actually getting us to learn about who we are as humans and individuals, more so than just the way that we present ourselves when we're looking our best, or the way that we want to present ourselves. So communication's key, and I think we're learning so much about one another now.
I think that word communication, it's so important. Relationships, intimacy, communication. So we could go on for another 3 hours, I think, but we're going to wrap up after this rapid fire round. And what I'd like for each one of you, starting with you, Priyanka, is that what is one thing that people can do to maintain their mental hygiene, according to you?
How I maintain my mental hygiene? I hope I got that question right. So I dance. I have 2 left feet, but I dance. And I dance like no one's watching whenever I dance. I think that's the best thing I do, especially after a long day. I lock my husband out of the room and I just go crazy to all sorts of music.
You can dance.
Yeah,
That's what
dance. Yeah, but you haven't seen me dance behind a closed room, right? That's all sorts of crazy. And I think that's primarily because it takes care of the movement I need, the mental disengagement I need, and helps me focus on myself for those 20 minutes. So I love that. I just love it.
Super. Yeah. So Naina, what is that one thing that people can do to maintain their mental hygiene?
Smile. I think even when you smile, you just feel good. There's something about upturning your lips. Just upturn the lips and you actually feel better. Easiest, simple.
Gopi, what about you?
Well, I think, Nina, whenever I see people, everyone seems to be in a rush. Uh, People are always talking about time running out, and they're in a rush either physically or mentally. So I would say, even if you have to rush, rush slowly.
Lovely, lovely. Raghu, what about you?
um, try to appreciate yourself every day. You might have a
Alessandra,
plan of what you want to accomplish, but just try to appreciate yourself.
lovely. Alessandra, what about you?
I would say to feel all the feels. If you're feeling
Woo!
sad, feel sad, cry. My favorite place to cry is in the shower. I sit in the shower and I just cry. I'm a dancer, so I dance. That's when I feel the most at peace in my mind. If I'm feeling, like I can't keep still, I'll just get in the car. I did that a lot during quarantine is I didn't leave the house and it just made me go Looney Tunes. So I would just get in the car and I would just drive and drive and drive and just like feel some sort of escape from my mind. So feel the feels.
Yeah,
Love
I
it,
just
love
want
it,
to
love it.
add, I think I love that, Alessandra, and we talked about this. And like the thing that I love, and I don't know when this came to me. I think I was in nature somewhere solo with a notebook, and it said, I was trying to figure out what is human perfection. And the answer that I could come up with is that it's the ability that we have to feel joy, to feel sadness, to feel anger, to feel connection. And we have to allow ourselves to have that full range and to not be clouded by social media's toxic positivity.
I think that's so important, Raghu, because we want to appear to be happy all the time, and that toxic positivity sometimes doesn't allow you to even talk about the fact that you're feeling awful,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? And I wanted to say more what Gopi, Alessandra, and very much. So for me, that one thing is that I pick up the phone and I talk to somebody, and for me that helps me with my mental health. We have a question. Is there a question here, Raghu, that just came here?
You
It
just
says
said, I would say,
I would say
get
get
better.
and love them.
I have two pets. I have two
Yeah,
dogs and they're my emotional support.
lovely. And thank you so much for joining, everybody. Raghu, would you like to say something?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for for this, Nina, for joining us, this joining us as a board member during this whole process, actually, and being so supportive of Minds and bringing this together in such a short period of time. I do think next year we probably need maybe 2 months instead of a week and a half. But I've learned so much, I think, over the course of the past few panels. Minds Foundation has been going strong since 2010. We've serviced, we've provided mental health education and services to over 300,000 people already throughout India and now into the US as well. And so, definitely we would love your support any way that you can. Visit our website. We have tons of resources there. There's so much more to come. World Mental Health Day is coming up on Saturday, October 10th. So many surprises there. Alessandra Torresani joining us as a Minds ambassador recently, which is super exciting as well. So her and I have a few exciting things up our sleeve for you guys. So follow us on social media. But truly, all of the panelists, this has been incredible. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to a lot more collaboration and bringing some more resources to folks that are really, stuck in the dark during this time.
Thank you, Raghu.
All right.